depending on how much alcohol, how much, when, etc. But I mean, if you just live here and you're familiar with the community, despite my saying this is the best of all possible universities, the best of all possible worlds, for people that are basically healthy. But you've got a population of people, which is pretty visible, actually, of people that, I mean, I've listened to some young people say, the people that are drunk and on the streets are our heroes. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then they explain, well, they were originally grown up in order to be hunters in their community. And for the community, they were the ones that fed everybody. So they're the heroes. But now look at them, because they no longer can do those kinds of jobs. They can't grow up to be that kind of hero in their community. Because everybody buys sodas and chips and watches TV. Plus, a lot of those people are damaged from the alcohol, which, by the way, was a weapon. Alcohol became a weapon when people were moving west. They realized that instead of shooting at attackers, they could just offer them cases of whiskey. And the attackers would take the case of whiskey and go away and never come back, because they didn't have a culture that explained to them, take this bottle, lock it in a cabinet, and every other day or so have a little bit before dinner. I mean, that's the culture of that kind of alcohol that can thrive. What happened, of course, was the individuals that weren't familiar with this called it firewater, or they drank it and they figured they were speaking to the spirits, and they would drink it until they were dead, basically. And it's not like they had a basement in their teepee where they had a cabinet where they could keep it and lock it so that the kids wouldn't get it. So basically, the people moving west, the great manifest destiny folks, used whiskey as a weapon. And it didn't stop with the West. The people that came up and basically wanted to do the same thing in Alaska began using whiskey as a weapon here, and it's still here, and it's still being used. And as a result, it's destroying many parts of the population. So when we're talking about intelligence and how important it will be in the future, we're clearly looking at people that are not affected by that. So who are we talking about? 75% of our population. In any case, his argument was that, here's the things that will enable an individual to grow up and be capable of learning the skills of the modern workplace so that they can work for Google. And by the way, you don't have to move to Washington State in order to work for Google, or wherever, California. I guess there's lots of places where you could go work for Google. You could actually work for Google from here. One of the neatest things I did, and this was years ago, was I helped write a logic book for Prentice Hall. It was, redoing the copy text, redoing this one that I'm using here. This is the full text. What we did was we created a little one called Essentials of Logic. And it was neat because I sat at my garage in Eagle River and I abridged the text and sent the stuff to New York, and they sent me money. Wow. So that, by the way, about the same time, Thomas Friedman, who is a New York Times reporter, opinion writer, basically focused on the Middle East. Had an article I just read this morning, for example. He still writes a lot. He's written books as well, and one of the books I remember reading, and it was even updated, and I ended up with both copies, actually, at home. It's called The World is Flat. And he's not joining the group of people that think, oh, the world is flat, that's humorous. But what he was trying to say was, because of the nature of the internet, you could work on a project in New York or, well, he didn't say it, but Anchorage. You don't have to live in New York to work for someone in New York. But that also means that you don't have to compete. It used to be location, location, location. And I'm a product of that too. When I retired from the Army, I had already bought a house here. I wanted to work here, and I would have liked to have taught philosophy. So I thought, you never know, I'll go to the university, put in a request to teach philosophy. I put in a one-page application, I love to teach. I used to teach philosophy as an undergraduate, as a graduate, etc. And they called me the next day and gave me 2 classes. No competition, right? That's why I'm still here. Sorry about that. It's not like I'm just incredibly brilliant. No, I've one of the few people that had the right credentials to actually do this job here, so I didn't have to go through the whole gamut of application. All the other people in my department have had to do that because I was kind of here from the beginning, and so they've all arrived, had to go through all that whole process. So we've got really brilliant people. But it used to be location, location, location. So if you were here, you didn't have to worry about competing with people from New York, or the Ivy Leaguers that were hoping to get a position in an Ivy League school, and none of them were applying to teach at UAA. So when they looked around and they said, what applications do we have for someone to teach intro? Aha, 1. And here I am. But that has changed, because now you can be an adjunct and teach at practically any university in the world from home. And that's what Thomas Friedman was talking about. The world is flat. However, it takes intelligence in order for you to compete in any of those things. So the end result is the world is your oyster, and I never understood why that would be a good thing. I'm not really fond of oysters. Have you ever eaten an oyster? They're pretty slimy creatures, and the worst of it is the tradition is to eat them raw. Yeah. With the sauce, and the only thing that makes it good is the sauce. So I don't see it. But nonetheless, we're saddled with this expression, the world is your oyster. We know what it means. It means you could go out there and do anything you like. It's not really true. However, in order to do anything you like, what you have to have the smarts to do it, to compete. And because the world is flat, you are competing against people in New York or Beijing or Timbuktu. There's a lot of people from Timbuktu that keep asking you for money because you owe them, or you have to save so and so, or they're scammers. And if they ask enough, especially elderly people with money, they make it. So intelligence. So his concern was we have to focus on this is Charles Murray in the bell curve. He and Herrnstein make sure that you're doing the best you can with your children, giving them healthy diet, the right kind of exercise to stay mentally healthy, etc. I mean, what kinds of, you need the right kind of sleep, you need a rich environment in the sense of not only having friends and the right kind of books. Mothers have to read to them. Fathers can too, actually, but it's typically the mother that sits the child on the lap and reads Big B, Big Brown Bear, Big Brown Bear, Blue Bull, Big Brown Bear, Blue Bull, Beautiful Baboon, Big Brown Bear, Blue Bull, Beautiful Baboon, Blowing Bubbles, Big, etc. Right? It's the Bee book, by the way, by Bernstein. However, so Murray, intelligence. That's the kind of focus parents should have for their children and for themselves, of course. So, an interesting problem that the book faced and resulted in what was called the Bell Curve Wars was that a lot of people didn't read the book, but heard that in the book was an argument that different racial groups were more intelligent than others. And statistically, when you look at IQ tests and so on, you do see that Asian races tend to be slightly higher, Caucasian races next, and other races slightly lower. Slightly. And the thing about a bell curve is that when you're looking at the bell curve, you're looking at the average statistically at the peak of the curve, but there's a long tail. And that long tail means you've got geniuses over here. And there's a lot of overlap from a lot of all those different groups. So, in other words, you have some of the most brilliant people in all of those different groups, and some of the dumbest, because the tail goes both ways, right? So that's just statistics gathered about things, but people read the book thinking that what Murray was arguing was that the race that wasn't even the smartest listed in the book was the smartest race, which, well, that's dumb, because that clearly didn't follow from the book. And number two, the argument that Charles Murray is a racist, and therefore you should be appalled at anything he says, does, or dresses the way he does, et cetera, which, considering, he's actually a brilliant person. So the Bell Curve Wars were basically kind of wokeness prior to wokeness. And in fact, at one of the lectures he was scheduled to give at Middlebury College, which I went to for 9 weeks one summer for a Russian immersion refresher course, they literally wouldn't let him talk, the students, and they weren't even students from the college. A lot of the people that were there in the audience were not students from the college. They wouldn't let him talk. They actually hurt the Middlebury faculty member who was accompanying him. They yanked on her hair and hurt her neck when she was outside accompanying him to like the car or something. They grabbed on her head and yanked her neck and hurt her. So they wouldn't allow him to speak, basically. And that was not too many years ago. But the thing that gets me is these are clearly people that haven't read the book. And being one of those people that actually reads and read the book more than once, especially the relevant sections, I'm like appalled, because no, there's nowhere in this where this is what this book is arguing. But it does argue from a statistical perspective that if you're going to be an American making the kind of money that you've grown up expecting, you need to have more of an education, especially in these fields. So, because you could statistically look at who makes what kind of money. Used to be that you wanted your son or daughter